Welcome to Almost Alone. Tonight we're talking about road trips, those long stretches of highway where you're suspended between where you came from and where you're going, where the familiar falls away and everything outside your car becomes temporary, anonymous. For most people, a road trip is just driving, miles passing, podcast playing, gas station coffee. But sometimes someone notices you, notices that you're alone, notices your route, notices when you stop, and they start making decisions about you. This episode features 3 stories from people whose road trips didn't go as planned. People who realized, sometimes too late, sometimes just in time, that they weren't traveling alone anymore. Before we begin, if you're new here, welcome. If you've been listening for a while, thank you. Either way, if these stories resonate with you, consider subscribing and hitting the like button. It helps more people find the channel. These stories are told calmly, but they're not easy. Let's begin. I'm 29 now. This happened when I was 22, driving from Arizona to Pennsylvania for my first real job after college. 1,700 miles. I'd done the math. If I drove straight through with minimal stops, I could make it in about 26 hours, split across 2 days. It seemed manageable. I left Phoenix early on a Tuesday morning before the sun came up. The plan was to drive until I couldn't anymore, sleep in my car at a rest area, then finish the drive the next day. I'd done long drives before. I wasn't worried. The first few hours were easy. I-40 east, straight through the desert, watching the sky turn from black to pink to white. I stopped for gas in Flagstaff around 8 in the morning, grabbed coffee and a breakfast sandwich, and got back on the road. That's when I first noticed the car, a dark blue sedan. Nothing remarkable about it. It pulled onto the highway a few cars behind me as I merged back from the gas station. I didn't think anything of it. Lots of people were heading east. By noon, I was crossing into New Mexico. The landscape stretched flat and endless in every direction. Long, empty stretches between towns. I kept the music loud and my mind occupied, trying not to think about how far I still had to go. I glanced in my rearview mirror out of habit. The blue sedan was still there. Not directly behind me. It was maybe 4 or 5 cars back, but it was the same car. I was pretty sure. Same color, same shape. I told myself it didn't mean anything. We were on the same highway. Lots of people drive I-40 for hours. It's one of the main routes across the country, but something about it bothered me. Around 2 in the afternoon, I stopped for gas in Albuquerque. I needed to stretch my legs anyway. My back was starting to ache from sitting so long. I pulled into a busy truck stop, filled up, and went inside to use the bathroom. When I came back out, I scanned the parking lot out of habit. The blue sedan was parked 3 rows over. I stopped walking. The driver wasn't visible. Windows were tinted, and there was a glare from the afternoon sun. But it was the same car. I was sure now. Same make, same model, same dark blue paint. I stood there for a moment, keys in my hand, trying to decide if I was being paranoid. Maybe they'd stop for gas too. That's normal. People stop for gas. But I hadn't seen anyone get out. And the car wasn't at a pump. It was just parked, facing my direction. I got back in my car and sat there for a few minutes, watching the sedan in my side mirror. No one got out. No one approached the pumps. The engine didn't start. It just sat there. My hands started to sweat. Finally, I pulled out and got back on the highway. For the next hour, I kept checking my mirrors. I didn't see the sedan. I started to relax. I'd been imagining things. It was just a coincidence. A random car on a long highway. Then, just outside of Tucumcari, I saw it again. It was back. Same position, 4 or 5 cars behind me, keeping pace. My stomach tightened. I told myself to stay calm. There was still a logical explanation. Maybe they were going to the same general area. Maybe they'd stopped somewhere I hadn't noticed and happened to get back on the highway around the same time. But I couldn't shake the feeling. I decided to test it. At the next exit, I pulled off the highway without signaling. Just a quick decision. A random exit into a small town I'd never heard of. If the sedan stayed on the highway, I'd know it was nothing. I took the exit ramp and turned into a gas station parking lot. I didn't need gas. I just parked and waited, watching the road. 30 seconds later, the blue sedan took the same exit. My heart started pounding. The sedan didn't pull into the gas station. It drove past slowly, then turned into a McDonald's parking lot across the street. I watched it park facing the road, facing me. I couldn't see the driver. The windshield had that same glare, but I could see the shape of a head. Someone sitting there, just sitting there, watching. I sat there for 5 minutes, trying to decide what to do. My phone had service. I could call someone. But what would I say? A car took the same exit as me. Finally, I pulled out of the gas station and got back on the highway. The sedan followed. And that's when I felt it. That cold understanding that settles in your stomach when you realize something is very, very wrong. This wasn't a coincidence. This was intentional. By the time I crossed into Texas, the sun was starting to set. I'd been driving for almost 12 hours. I was exhausted, but I didn't want to stop. Not with that car behind me. I kept thinking about the logistics. If someone wanted to follow me, how would they even know my route? I hadn't told anyone except my parents, and I'd only given them a general idea. I hadn't posted anything on social media. I'd just left. But then I remembered. My car had Arizona plates, and I was heading east. If someone wanted to follow a young woman driving alone cross-country, all they'd have to do was watch for out-of-state plates at a gas station and make a choice. I could have been anyone. I just happened to be alone. I started varying my speed, slowing down, speeding up, changing lanes. The sedan adjusted every time, never getting closer, never falling back, just maintaining that same distance. 4 or 5 cars between us, always. That spacing felt practiced, deliberate, like someone who'd done this before and knew exactly how close they could get without being obvious. Around 9 that night, I couldn't drive anymore. My eyes were burning. My hands ached from gripping the wheel. I took an exit toward a rest area, one of those big ones with bathrooms and vending machines and a parking lot full of semis. I pulled into a spot under a light, as close to the building as I could get. I sat there with the engine off, watching my mirrors. The blue sedan pulled in 2 minutes later. It didn't park near me. It went to the far end of the lot, away from the lights, and backed into a space facing my direction. I could see the shape of someone sitting in the driver's seat, just sitting there, watching. I locked my doors and tried to think. I could go inside the rest area. There were other people around, truckers, families, travelers. I'd be safe inside, but eventually I'd have to come back to my car, and they'd still be there. I pulled out my phone and called my dad. My voice shook when he answered. I told him what was happening. He listened quietly, then said, "Are you sure it's the same car?" I said yes. I was sure. He asked if I'd gotten the license plate number. I hadn't. I'd been too focused on the car itself, too afraid to get close enough. He told me to go inside, stay where there were people, and call the police if I felt unsafe. I wanted him to tell me I was overreacting, that it was just a coincidence. He didn't. I went inside and sat in the bright, fluorescent-lit seating area near the vending machines. There were a few other people around, a family with kids, an older man reading a newspaper, a woman asleep on a bench. I sat where I could see the parking lot through the window. The blue sedan didn't move. I watched it for 15 minutes, 20. The driver never got out, never turned on the interior light, just sat there in the darkness. After about 25 minutes, I saw the driver's door open. A man got out. He was average height, wearing jeans and a dark jacket. baseball cap pulled low. I couldn't see his face clearly from that distance, but I watched him walk slowly across the parking lot, not toward the building entrance, toward my car. He walked right up to it, stopped beside the driver's side door, looked in the windows. Then he walked around to the passenger side and did the same thing. My throat tightened. I couldn't breathe right. He was checking to see if I was inside. After a moment, he turned and walked toward the building, toward me. I stood up and moved closer to the family with kids. My heart was hammering. I kept my phone in my hand, ready to call 911. The man walked into the rest area, looked around briefly. His eyes swept right past me, then went into the men's restroom. I didn't wait. I walked quickly back to my car, got in, locked the doors, and pulled out of the rest area as fast as I could without drawing attention. My hands were shaking so badly the steering wheel vibrated. I got back on the highway and drove. I didn't see the sedan behind me. Not right away. I thought maybe I'd lost him. Maybe he was still in the bathroom. Maybe he didn't expect me to leave that fast. But 20 minutes later, there it was. Same position, same distance. He'd found me again. I started crying, not sobbing, just silent tears running down my face while I kept driving, while I watched those headlights in my rearview mirror, always there, always the same distance back. I didn't know what else to do. I called my dad again. This time, my voice broke when I spoke. He told me to drive to the nearest police station. He looked one up on his phone while I stayed on the line and gave me directions. There was a small-town police station about 40 miles ahead. I took the exit and followed the GPS through dark streets until I found it, a single-story building with 2 police cars parked out front. I pulled into the lot and sat there shaking. The blue sedan drove past slowly, didn't stop, didn't pull in, just drove past at exactly the speed limit and disappeared down the street, like he knew exactly what I was doing, like he was letting me know he could leave whenever he wanted. I went inside and told an officer what had happened. He took notes, asked for a description of the car, asked if I'd seen the driver clearly. I hadn't, not really. Just an average-sized man in a baseball cap. He said, without a license plate or a clear description, there wasn't much they could do. But he offered to follow me back to the highway and make sure I got on safely. He did. I drove the rest of the night without stopping. 12 more hours straight, surviving on gas station coffee and adrenaline. I didn't see the blue sedan again. When I finally pulled into my new apartment complex in Pennsylvania the next afternoon, I sat in the parking lot for a long time, just staring at the empty street, waiting to see if that car would appear one more time. It didn't. I never found out who was driving that car. I never saw it again. But 6 months later, I got a call from a detective in New Mexico. He said they'd arrested a man who'd been targeting solo female drivers on I-40. He'd follow them for hours, sometimes across multiple states, waiting for them to stop somewhere isolated. They found a notebook in his car when they arrested him, pages of notes, license plates, car descriptions, states they were from, times of day. The detective read me one of the entries. Arizona plates, heading east, young, alone, pulled off at Tucumcari, followed, stopped at rest area near Amarillo, checked vehicle, no contact, stayed at police station, didn't pursue further. He said my plate number was written next to that entry. I asked him what the man had been planning to do. The detective was quiet for a moment. Then he said, in his trunk we found zip ties, duct tape, a tarp. He had a hunting knife under the front seat. He paused. You staying at that police station probably saved your life. I think about that sometimes, about those 12 hours with him behind me, about how many times I almost pulled over at a different rest area, a darker one without families and truckers and light, about how close he got to my car while I sat inside that building, watching through the window. And I think about that notebook, all those other license plates, all those other women. I wonder how many of them made it to a police station and how many didn't. I'm 31 now. This happened when I was 25, driving back from a wedding in Nashville. It was late October, and I'd planned to make the 10-hour drive home in one day. But I'd stayed at the reception longer than I meant to, and by the time I got on the road, it was already past 9 at night. I made it about 6 hours before I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. It was almost 3 in the morning, and I was somewhere in rural Kentucky. Long stretches of empty highway, no towns for miles, just darkness and trees pressing in on both sides of the road. I saw a motel sign lit up ahead and decided to stop. It wasn't part of a chain, just an old independent place, the kind with a gravel parking lot and rooms in a single-story L-shaped building. The sign out front said "Vacancy" in flickering neon letters, half the letters dimmer than the others. I pulled in. There were only 2 other cars in the lot, both parked at the far end near the office. Both had a thin layer of dust on them, like they'd been sitting there for days. The office was small and outdated when I walked in. Wood paneling on the walls, a bell on the counter, a dusty plastic plant in the corner. Behind the desk was a man in his 50s, heavy set, wearing a stained t-shirt. He was watching a small TV mounted on the wall, but he looked up the moment I walked in, like he'd been waiting. "Need a room?" he asked. His voice was friendly enough, but there was something about the way he looked at me, a slow sweep from my face down to my shoes and back up, that made my skin prickle. I said yes. Just for a few hours. I'd be leaving early. He nodded slowly, like he was thinking about it, then pulled out a registration card and slid it across the counter. While I filled it out, he asked where I was headed. I said home. He asked where home was. I gave him the name of my city, vague enough, I thought. "Long drive," he said. "You by yourself?" I hesitated. Something about the question felt off, but I was exhausted and I just wanted to sleep. I said yes. He smiled, not in a warm way, in a knowing way. "End of the building's real quiet," he said. "You'll sleep good back there." He handed me a key, an actual metal key on a plastic tag, not a key card. Room 12. I thanked him and left, feeling his eyes on me the entire time I walked to the door. The room was at the far end, just like he'd said. The farthest from the office, tucked into the corner where the 2 sides of the L-shaped building met. I parked directly in front of the door and unlocked it. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and mildew, with something else underneath, something sour I couldn't identify. The carpet was worn and stained. A double bed with a faded floral comforter sat in the middle, and a small TV was bolted to the dresser. The bathroom was tiny, just a toilet, a sink, and a shower with a yellowed plastic curtain. I didn't care. I just needed to sleep. I locked the door and tested the handle. It felt loose. The whole mechanism wobbled when I touched it. I tried locking it again, jiggling it, and the bolt slid into place, but the deadbolt above it wouldn't turn all the way. It caught on something inside the frame and stopped halfway. I tried again. Same thing. The lock was broken. I looked around for something to wedge against the door. There was a wooden chair in the corner. I dragged it over and propped it under the handle, testing it a few times to make sure it would hold. Then I noticed something else. The curtain over the window didn't close all the way. There was a gap, maybe 2 inches, where the fabric didn't quite meet in the middle. I tried pulling it tighter, but the rod was bent, and the curtain wouldn't budge. Through the gap, I could see my car, and beyond that, the empty parking lot and the dim glow of the office window at the far end. If I could see out, someone could see in. I turned off the lamp, got into bed fully clothed, and set an alarm for 6 a.m. I didn't fall asleep right away. The room was too quiet. I could hear every sound, the hum of the mini fridge in the corner, the creak of the building settling, the occasional car passing on the distant highway. but I couldn't hear anything from the other rooms. No TV sounds, no voices, no footsteps through thin walls. Just silence, like I was the only person staying there. Then I heard footsteps outside, slow, deliberate, crunching across the gravel. I held my breath and listened. The footsteps stopped. Right outside my door, I lay completely still, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I waited for a knock, for a voice, for something. Nothing. Just the sense of someone standing there inches away, separated only by a thin door with a broken lock. After what felt like a full minute, the footsteps moved away. Slowly, like whoever it was wasn't in any hurry. I got up and looked through the peephole. The parking lot was empty. No one outside. Just my car and the two dusty vehicles at the far end. But through the gap in the curtain, I saw something. A shadow moving past the office window. I watched it pause, then move again, disappearing around the side of the building, toward my end. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening, my phone clutched in my hand. Around 4 a.m, I heard it again. Footsteps, closer this time. Stopping at each door, one by one, working their way down the row, getting closer. I sat up in bed, barely breathing. Footsteps reached my door, stopped. Then I heard the soft, metallic sound of a key sliding into the lock. My lock. The handle turned. The door pushed inward, just an inch. The chair scraped against the floor but held. Whoever was on the other side pushed again. Harder this time. The chair held. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. The door stopped moving. I heard breathing on the other side. Heavy. Close. Like someone listening. Then footsteps again. Moving away. But not back toward the office. Toward the window. I looked at the gap in the curtain just in time to see a shadow pass by outside. Someone was looking in. I pressed myself against the far wall, as far from the window as I could get, and stayed there until the shadow moved away. At 4:30, I heard my car alarm go off. I looked out through the gap. The alarm lights were flashing. Someone had touched my car. I watched, waiting to see who it was. No one appeared. The alarm stopped after about 30 seconds. The parking lot went quiet again. But now I could see something I hadn't noticed before. My driver's side door was open, just a crack. I know I locked it. I always lock it. Someone had opened it. I didn't go outside to check. I just sat there against the wall, watching the window, waiting for sunrise. At 6, my alarm went off. I moved the chair, unlocked the door, and opened it fast, expecting someone to be standing there. No one. The parking lot looked the same as it had the night before. Morning light was just starting to touch the tops of the trees beyond the building. I walked quickly to my car. The driver's side door was closed now, but the handle was smudged. Greasy fingerprints, like someone had tried it multiple times. I got in, locked the doors, and started the engine. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced at the office. The clerk was standing in the window, coffee mug in his hand, watching me leave. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just stood there, perfectly still, watching. And I realized he didn't look tired. His hair wasn't messy. His clothes were clean. He'd been awake all night. I drove straight through the rest of the way home. I didn't stop again until I was back in my own driveway. A week later, I tried calling the motel. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted confirmation that I'd overreacted, that it was nothing. The number was disconnected. I looked the place up online. There were reviews, not many, maybe 15 total, spread out over 2 years. But the ones from women traveling alone all said the same thing. Doors don't lock properly, left early. Heard someone trying my door at 3 a.m. Do not stay here alone. The clerk asked too many questions about where I was going and if anyone was meeting me. Made me very uncomfortable. Woke up to footsteps outside my window. Checked out immediately even though I'd paid for the full night. One review was longer than the others. I stayed here 2 years ago. Worst night of my life. Someone unlocked my door in the middle of the night. I had wedged the dresser against it. They pushed hard enough to move it a few inches before I screamed and they left. The next morning, the clerk said I must have been dreaming. I found a master key hanging on a hook behind the office desk when I went to check out. Do not stay here. I reported it to the local police in that county. They said they'd look into it. I don't know if they ever did, but I think about it sometimes. About how close I came to falling asleep in that room. About what might have happened if I hadn't wedged that chair under the door. About the clerk, standing in the window at dawn, clean and awake, watching me drive away with that blank expression. And I think about the other women who stayed there. The ones whose reviews stopped abruptly after they mentioned feeling unsafe. I wonder if they all made it out, or if some of them trusted that broken lock, fell asleep too deeply, didn't hear the footsteps in time. Sometimes I wonder if that motel is still there, still taking reservations, still putting solo women at the end of the building, in the quiet rooms where no one can hear them. I'm 27 now. This happened 3 years ago on a drive from Atlanta to Charlotte. It wasn't a long trip, just under 4 hours, but I'd left late after work and ended up driving through the night. By the time I hit the North Carolina border, it was almost 2 in the morning. The highway was empty, just me and the occasional semi, long stretches of nothing in between. I saw a rest area sign and decided to stop. I needed to use the bathroom, and I wanted to stretch my legs. I'd been in the car for over 2 hours straight, and my back was starting to ache. The rest area was small, just a single building with bathrooms, a couple of vending machines, and a parking lot with spaces for maybe 20 cars. When I pulled in, there was only one other vehicle there, a white SUV parked near the entrance to the building. I parked a few spaces away and got out. The air was cold, quiet. I could hear the hum of the highway in the distance, but otherwise, it was completely still. No wind, no insects. Just that deep, empty quiet that only exists in the middle of nowhere at 2 in the morning. As I walked toward the building, I noticed someone standing near the SUV. A woman, maybe in her 30s, wearing jeans and a light jacket. She was looking down at her phone, her face lit up by the screen. She looked up as I approached. "Excuse me," she said, her voice polite, almost apologetic. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but my phone's about to die. Do you have a charger I could borrow, just for a few minutes?" I hesitated. Something about the situation felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on what. She seemed normal. Her tone was polite, apologetic even, and it was a reasonable request. People help each other at rest stops all the time. I told her I had a charger in my car. "Thank you so much," she said, her face lighting up with relief. "I really appreciate it. I'm trying to call my husband. He was supposed to meet me, but he's not answering." I nodded and turned back toward my car. As I walked, something nagged at me. Why would her husband meet her at a highway rest area in the middle of the night? Why not just at home or at a gas station? I pushed the thought away. People have their reasons. I grabbed my charging cable from the center console and walked back. She was standing by the driver's side door of the SUV, still holding her phone. "You can plug it in here if you want," I said, holding out the cable. "Actually," she said, "would you mind if I sat in your car for a minute? It's freezing out here and my car won't start. The battery's dead." I looked at her SUV. The headlights were off. The engine wasn't running, but something didn't feel right. "I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that," I said carefully. "But you can use my cable out here." Her expression changed, just for a second. A flicker of something, annoyance, maybe frustration, before she smiled again. "Of course," she said. "I totally understand." She took the cable and walked toward the front of her SUV, like she was going to plug it into the cigarette lighter through the driver's side door. But instead of opening the door, she just stood there, holding the cable, not moving. That's when I noticed it. I'd walked past the front of her SUV on my way back from my car. I'd been close enough that I should have felt cold metal, cold air, but I hadn't. I'd felt warmth. I looked at the hood more carefully. In the glow of the parking lot lights, I could see a faint shimmer in the air above it, heat rising. And the windshield had condensation on the inside, the kind that forms when a car has been running with the heat on and then gets turned off. Her car wasn't dead. It had been running recently, maybe minutes ago. My stomach dropped. "You know what?" I said, taking a step back. "I actually need to get going. You can keep the cable." "Wait," she said quickly, her voice changing, sharper now, more urgent. "I just need—" That's when I saw him. A man stepping out from the shadows near the corner of the building. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark hoodie pulled up over his head. He'd been standing there the whole time, in the shadows, waiting. He didn't say anything, just started walking toward me. Not running, not rushing, just walking with the steady, purposeful pace of someone who knows exactly what they're doing. I turned and walked quickly back to my car. I didn't run. I didn't want to show panic, didn't want to trigger them into moving faster, but I moved fast. Behind me, I heard the woman call out, "Hey, wait, I really need help." But her voice didn't sound distressed anymore. It sounded annoyed, frustrated, like I'd messed something up. I got to my car, yanked the door open, got in, and locked it in one motion. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely get the key in the ignition. In the rearview mirror, I saw the man still walking toward me. Not running, not hurrying, just walking, like he had all the time in the world. Like he knew I was panicking and he didn't need to rush. I started the engine and put the car in reverse. The man stopped in the middle of the parking lot. The woman was standing by the SUV, phone in her hand, watching. Neither of them tried to stop me. They just stood there, watching me leave. And that was somehow worse than if they'd chased me, because it meant they'd done this before. They knew most people wouldn't run. Most people would stay and help. Most people wouldn't notice the warm hood or the condensation or the man waiting in the shadows. Most people would get close enough. I pulled out onto the highway and drove. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel. My heart was hammering. I kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see headlights following me. But the road behind me stayed dark. I didn't stop again until I reached Charlotte. The next morning, I called the highway patrol and told them what happened. I described the rest area, the white SUV, the woman, and the man. The officer took notes. Then he asked if I'd gotten the license plate. I hadn't. He said they'd send someone to check the area, but without more information, there wasn't much they could do. His tone suggested he thought I'd overreacted, that I'd probably misread the situation. A week later, I got a call from a different officer. This one introduced himself as a detective. His voice was serious. He said they'd been investigating reports of similar incidents at rest areas along that stretch of highway over the past 8 months. A woman approaching solo travelers, usually women, sometimes men traveling alone, asking for help with a phone or a dead battery. A second person waiting nearby. Sometimes a third. In most cases, the travelers got suspicious and left before anything happened. But in 2 cases, people had gone back to their cars to get jumper cables or phone chargers. In one case, a woman was pulled into the SUV. A truck driver pulling into the rest area heard her screaming and ran over. They let her go and drove off. In the second case, a man was hit over the head from behind while he was trying to jumpstart their battery. They dragged him toward the SUV. Another car pulled in, a family with kids, and they ran. The detective said they never caught them, but they found the SUV abandoned in a Walmart parking lot 2 counties over. Inside, they found zip ties, duct tape, a knife, rope, and a notebook. It wasn't names, the detective said, just descriptions, notes, times. He paused. I'm going to read you one of them if that's okay. I said, okay. He read, rest area, exit 47, 2:10 a.m. Woman, mid-20s, alone, sedan. Asked about charger, walked to car, noticed hood, declined help, left quickly. There was another pause. That match your experience? He asked. I said yes. You're very lucky, he said quietly. The 2 people who stayed, the woman who got pulled in and the man who got hit, both of them said the same thing. They noticed something was off, but they didn't trust their gut. They thought they were being rude or paranoid. He paused again. Your instinct to check that hood probably saved your life. I think about that sometimes, about how close I came, about how I almost said yes when she asked to sit in my car, about the man standing in the shadows, watching, waiting for me to let my guard down, about how long he stood there before I arrived. 5 minutes, 10, an hour, just waiting for someone to pull in alone. And I think about that moment when I walked past the hood, that one tiny detail, warmth where there should have been cold. If I hadn't noticed it, if I'd been more tired, more distracted, more focused on being polite, I don't know where I'd be right now. I don't know if I'd have ended up in that SUV, or if I'd have made it out of that parking lot at all. I just know that the detective said they found something else in the notebook, a tally. Not names, not details, just a number, 7. He said he didn't know what it meant, but I do. I think it meant 7 people who didn't notice the warm hood. 7 people who didn't see the man in the shadows. 7 people who stayed, and I think about how close I came to being number 8. That's the end of tonight's episode. 3 people, 3 road trips, 3 moments where everything could have gone differently. The thing about traveling is that you're visible. Your license plate tells people where you're from. Your route is predictable. When you stop, you're alone in unfamiliar places where no one knows your name. And sometimes, someone notices, someone patient, someone who knows that most people are polite, helpful, and tired enough not to question what doesn't feel quite right. These 3 people survived because they listened to that small voice that said something was wrong. They trusted their instincts over their desire to be polite or to avoid seeming paranoid. If tonight's episode resonated with you, I'd appreciate it if you'd take a moment to like the video or leave a comment. If you have your own story, something that happened on the road, at a rest stop, or in a place where you thought you were safe, you can submit it through the link in the description. And if you haven't already, subscribe. There's more to come. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, when something feels wrong, it usually is.